What in the 20s is going on?
In the 20s,
Think about
yes. The 20s, baby. Plenty.
What in the 20s is
I
going
am
on?
here for my 20s, baby.
This is the 20s.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Azama Mkize, and this is What's in the 20s, a podcast where you listen to me grow through its baby. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about living in survival mode. I know, hold on, first and foremost, today's the 26th of April, which means it is my birthday, and I am 27 years old today, which is so insane. I started this podcast when I was 23. I was 23 when I started this podcast, and so much has happened since, so much growing, so much, if you've been here since the very beginning, I think you can probably hear even in my thoughts and opinions on things and all of that kind of stuff. Like I've changed, I've evolved, I've, hopefully just become a better version of myself. I'm always striving to be a wiser version of myself and just give my best, I try to dedicate myself to learning a lot, reading a lot and all of that kind of stuff, and sharing what I think or feels beneficial. And I hope in some way, in any way, that this podcast has felt like that for you. This started off as me just really going through a lot, honestly, just me really frustrated with life and not understanding, because the 20s feel so confusing and overwhelming, and I needed an outlet to kind of voice my thoughts and opinions. I needed someone to come save me, and essentially, it's that understanding that no one's coming to save you, and so I came to save me. I put in a lot of effort to try and save me out of a lot of the confusions that I have always felt, and that I'm aware that I'm going to continue to feel for the rest of my life and all of that kind of stuff, since we can't answer every single question, and I'm sure in a couple of years I'm going to be changing my mind again and stuff. But I appreciate you guys just being here and pushing me, because there's so many times where I want to give up. There's so many times where I question, what am I even doing? Is this even relevant? Is this even important? And just that overthinking thing. And it's now that I'm 27, I'm entering the late 20s. That's so insane. The late 20s is so crazy to think about. But that's where I'm kind of moving, and it's just feeling, whew. First and foremost, aging doesn't scare me anymore, which is really such a relief, because when I tell people I'm 27, they're always just like, damn, I don't understand. I think that people always, at least I understand, even when I was younger, we always thought 27 is an old age. Wow, you're nearing 30, you're old, you're 27. But I honestly feel the youngest I've ever felt. I feel the healthiest I've ever felt. I feel the most excited and passionate about life that I've ever felt. And I know that I'm going to keep feeling that way the more that I keep investing in myself and all the rest. I love aging, because I feel even when I reflect, I'm able to do more, I'm able to do more with the money I make. I'm able to, decide more of my life and my decisions and my circles and whatever. I'm able to be more selfish, I'm able to just, I don't know. It's just a lot more fun. I feel a lot more, as I said, wiser, stronger, cooler, all of that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to speak about that today, because it also brought up the topic about living in survival mode. And I think a lot of my life, I felt like I was in survival mode. And sometimes I get into tendencies of slipping in and out of survival mode and stuff like that. And I think about how I know a lot of people who feel like their life is constantly just living in survival mode, where they're constantly just trying to get by, trying to get through, trying to get over something, trying to heal from something, trying to move on from something, and I've felt like a lot of my life has felt like that. A lot of my life has just felt like trying to get past the stage, whatever that is, get past this season. And that's what I wanted to speak about in this episode, because I feel like what I really want to challenge myself to do in the year 27 is to get out of it, get out of fight or flight, get out of just feeling like I'm constantly racing against something, fighting against something, and all of that kind of stuff. Like I really want to enjoy my life. I really want to take control of my life again and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's so easy to lose it when certain things happen to us. And it can feel so destabilizing when something hurtful or traumatic and all of that kind of stuff happens. And yeah, you know what? Let's just get into it. So out of survival mode, how does it even happen? How does it begin? A lot of the times it starts in childhood, things that have occurred when we were really young and impressionable. When we put our trust in adults, when we expected them to know better, to give more, to share, to be the people we needed, and when they failed to do that, when the world hurt us or took something from us and all of that kind of stuff, it sends you into a state that just gets wired inside of you, where you spend the rest of your life living in that state of anxiety, that state of fear, that state of constant attack against you. I think that it's a feeling of stress. When you're constantly in a space that is stressful, you will be living in survival mode because your cortisol is shot all the way up that you don't even know how to self-regulate. You don't even know how to come back to calm because everything is just taking you to, it's sending you, you're like a ticking time bomb and stuff because this needs to get done. This needs to get paid. This needs to be sent forward or whatever. This person needs help. This person is relying on you. This thing needs to be sorted out or whatever it is. There's bills, there's that. It's just a constant deadlines that keep coming after you back to back to back, even at the same time. You almost feel like it's a luxury or a leisure to be able to do anything outside of sorting things out, outside of doing what you need to do, because you're just unable to find the time to do what you want to do. You're unable to find the finances to do what you want to do, the people and all of that kind of stuff. Like you feel kind of trapped in a space that's keeping you in this surge of stress and all of that kind of stuff. I think that a lack of safety, if something had happened to you that had just stripped you away of that feeling of protection and all of that kind of stuff, you're always going to be feeling like you're in survival mode because you're always alert. You're always aware of your surroundings. You're aware of people and the way that they approach you and their intentions. You're always having question marks, around that and kind of stuff because you're trying to protect yourself. And that's the thing also about living in survival mode. It is really your body's way of trying to protect yourself from letting what had happened to you happen again, letting what had hurt you again, and all of that kind of stuff. What had break you again, and all of, I think it is a feeling of lack of security, right? If you, for example, were financially stable and all of a sudden all of that was just taken from you, and everything just was gone, and you're struggling to put two coins together and stuff like that, that lack of security will stress you out and you will live in survival mode. That feeling of not having enough, that feeling of it's just when am I going to get there, and all of there are all these different traumatic experiences that can happen to you that can send your body into a state of stress, into a state of attack. And you need to be cognizant of when that's happening, because sometimes we don't even notice and we project that into the relationships we have with people. We project that into the opportunities that come forth in our lives. I think that if we were abandoned or neglected at some point in our lives, maybe there was a relationship we had that we believed in and trusted in, and now it's just gone. Parents that neglected you and all that kind of, like, that feeling, we start creating very dangerous attachment styles because of that, abandonment issues because of that, and so it's very stressful for you to trust relationships moving forward, because you're always concerned about if they're going to abandon you, right? Which brings me to my point on the problems, right? The effects of living in survival mode is first and foremost fear. As I said, fear of when the next person is going to abandon you, because of your attachment styles you create based on the experiences you had. You're constantly worried that this person's going to leave. This person's going to step out. This person's going to disappoint you. This person's going to let you down. This person's going to hurt you and all of that, because you've been hurt before. You've gone through this before, with people that you trusted not to. So it makes it very difficult for you to trust anyone and all of that kind of stuff. Like, fear consumes you when you're in survival mode because you don't have time to let your guard down. You don't have time to relax. You don't have time to take the risk and to trust. All your mind is concerned about is protecting you. All your mind is concerned about is making sure that you're fine. And so you do things like self-sabotage. You self-sabotage opportunities. You self-sabotage good relationships and people and all of that kind of stuff because you can't afford to take that chance. Perhaps in your childhood, you had to be the person that had to emotionally stabilize the household. You had to step up in a way that meant people can rely on you and depend on you and all of that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of fear that if you don't make money, if you're not grounded, if you're not stable, if you're not all of these things, everything is going to fall apart because from a young age, you were expected to be the person that shows up for you, to just handle it, to just take care of yourself. Hyper independence is another effect, right? Because if you were abandoned or neglected or you've lost things or, things just didn't work out the way you thought, you constantly feel like the only person that is looking out for you is you. You feel like the only person that can show up for you is you. And so you feel the need to take care of everything. You feel the need to handle everything. You feel the need to carry the world on your shoulders because you can't rely on someone. You can't depend on, I hate depending on people. Like, it makes me feel so like at the mercy of somebody else. And I don't like that feeling. I'd rather figure it out myself. I'd rather solve it myself. I'd rather, find a solution myself. I don't like asking for help. I don't like feeling like I owe somebody something and all of that kind of stuff. And that's the thing. You're constantly in that fight or flight mode, like, which it's go time all the time. I think that an effect of living in a survival mode is hyper awareness. You're constantly aware of, let's say, a shortage. So we're using the example of like once upon a time you had money, you were stable, you had things, and all of a sudden you didn't. You're constantly aware of how much milk someone is using, of how much butter is being used, how much bread is being used. You're constantly aware of prices of things. You're constantly like your hyper fixation on anything and everything because some things can immediately start feeling like a waste to you. Some things can immediately start feeling like irrelevant, unimportant. It doesn't matter. Like, some things can start feeling like exorbitant for you and all of that kind of stuff. If you see the way some people live their lives or casually, enjoy their experiences of something, whatever, you're constantly counting the pennies. You're constantly just fix. And sometimes it'll be even when you are able to afford, mind you, even when you have developed a stable account, right, to support yourself and all of that kind of stuff, you're still living in that mindset of being so hyper fixated and aware of anything and everyone around you. If something happened where your safety was compromised, you're hyper aware of people. You're hyper aware if somebody's carrying a weapon or not, of safety, of exit windows and doors and all of that kind of stuff. Like, is this a safe space for me to be around? Like, you're just constantly thinking, your brain is going into overdrive, trying to figure out, am I safe here? Is this okay? Is this, you know what I'm saying? Can I trust this space or this person? And a lot of the times it don't, because why should you? And all of that kind of stuff. I think it can lead you into a scarcity mindset if you're not careful. So you always think that it could run out, right? It's so difficult for you to spend on you because you're afraid of a time where you might not have any more again. You're afraid of the feeling of having to of lack. When you've experienced lack, you do everything in your power to not go back to that place again. And so you are afraid of, when is the next opportunity coming? When is the next relationship gonna come. You're so afraid of leaving this relationship because you don't know when the next good one is coming for you. You know, if love will find you again and all of that kind of stuff, because you feel like you were robbed of it before. You experienced being lonely, you experienced not having it, and so it's so scary for you, and so everything feels like there's not enough. Everything feels like it's gonna run out. You feel like you're gonna run out of your good luck and all of that kind of stuff. You feel like everything is gonna dry up, and it's so scary for you to exist in the world, you know, because you're always wondering if this is the time where, you know, things start going bad for you, if this is the moment where somebody leaves you and all of that kind of stuff. Like it messes with you mentally. The exhaustion and fatigue that being in survival mode takes. You're always tired because you're always thinking, you're always worried, you're always concerned, you're always planning, you're always over planning, you know, you're always just kind of setting yourself for any and every possibility. And so we're always tired. Headaches. You will get headaches because your brain is exhausted from everything you're stressed about and worried about and all of that. It's going into overdrive, you know, but that's all it knows how to do. You don't sleep, you know, it's so difficult for you to sleep because your brain is running. Your body hasn't reached a state of calm in order to allow you to rest. And so because the stress hormones are pumping through you constantly all the time, you're always on alert, you know, you're always just hyper fixated. And so you can't rest, you can't sleep, you know, you'll find yourself sleeping late, waking up early. And even when you're sleeping, it's not restful. You wake up and you're still tired. It's so painful living in survival mode. I think that you struggle with emotional regulation when you're living in survival mode. And so because you're just constantly onto the next, trying to work things out, trying to, you know, worried about this and stuff, you don't even know when you should be crying, because crying is a form of emotional regulation, right? It's allowing the emotions to expel out of you, to cool down, to calm the body down from the heightened sense of feeling and emotion. You don't even make time to really feel that and stuff. So you can't bring yourself down and stuff. And so you end up snapping at people. You end up just being really frustrated all the time, angry all the time. You are an unpleasant person to be around because you're not regulating yourself. Everything upsets you. Everything feels like incompetence. You don't have the patience because you feel like you don't have the time, because you feel like things need to get done all the time. You know what I'm saying? And so because of that, it's just, it's so painful. It's so painful when you cannot regulate your emotions, because people who care about you end up experiencing the worst of you, the worst version of you because of that circumstance. I think that it makes it very difficult for you to be present with people. You struggle to be in the present moment because, as I said, you're always planning for possible outcomes, the worst possible outcome, the best possible outcome, the this and that, you know, the alternatives and all of that kind of stuff. You can't even enjoy the moment because you're constantly thinking about the future. You're constantly thinking about if everything's going to be fine and all of that kind of stuff, if everything's going to stay the way that you need it to stay and this and that. And so you can't even enjoy moments. You ever feel like that? Like you go on a holiday and you can't even enjoy it because you're worried about your finances and stuff like that. You just in spaces and you can't even experience the fulfillment of it because your mind is constantly running to the next achievement, the next goal, the next plan and stuff. And it really, really sucks. I think that you become very reactive rather than responsive. So as I said, because you just are in a terrible state, you're constantly snapping, your guard is always up when you're in survival mode. You feel like you need to protect your inner child. You feel like you need to protect that version of you that wasn't protected, that version of you that lost their innocence, that lost their sense of security, that felt abandoned and neglected and all of that, that just wasn't taken care of. And so you try to protect that version by being someone that people cannot connect with, by being someone that people, you try to build your wall so high because in your mind you're believing that this way no one can hurt you, but love encompasses pain too, and it is a privilege to love so much that we can grieve, to love so much that we can hurt to the depths of pain, and I think that we try to guard ourselves so much so that we don't have to experience that at all. So we don't have anything to do with that kind of experience because it's painful. But pain is part of the human experience. It is a privilege, genuinely, to feel all these emotions, and to know that it is because I have loved. I am scared because I have loved, and I have lost love. I've lost people that I have loved, and I am grateful, for the opportunity to have met people who have loved me so deeply, and that I can love back. That I had experiences where I can say love does exist, you know what I'm saying? And in so many different forms and phases of your life and stuff like that. And we have to be able to open ourselves up to it, despite circumstances that have hurt us, despite circumstances that didn't measure up to our expectations of what we thought it would be. We have to still be willing to press forward, to push on. I think that the problem with constantly living in survival mode is that we lose self-trust, right? We don't trust ourselves because we're so tired. We overthink, we overcompensate, we over-explain, we over everything, because we're just trying to get through. And so we don't even trust our emotions. We don't trust ourselves to make decisions, right? I know that when I am not self-regulating, emotionally regulating and stuff, I'm not in a good place to make decisions because I lack clarity. That is another point, right? Is how we get out of survival mode is we need clarity. We need to be able to see the full picture. We need to be able to calm ourselves down. And you can't be calm when you're stressed. And when you're stressed, you're often moving very quickly, right? Your brain is often moving very quickly. And so it can't see things accurately. It can't see things properly because it's scanning through things very fast. And you need to bring your body to a state of calm so you can register what's going on. You can process what's going on. And when you're able to establish that level of clarity, you're not you're not making decisions to survive. You're making decisions for sustainability. You're making decisions for longevity. You're making decisions that will serve a better outcome rather than just getting by, just scraping by and self-sabotaging and all of that kind of stuff. I think that we experience a feeling of burnout often when we are in survival mode because we're constantly exhausted and stressed and overwhelmed and all of that kind of stuff. We will feel burned out. We'll lose an interest in the things that used to bring us joy, whether it's our relationships, our careers, our hobbies, our friends, and all of that. We will start not caring for them. It's so difficult to nurture something that is actively keeping us in a state of anxiety. It's so difficult to grow something when we are actively in a state of stress, and another way that we can find a solution to get out of survival mode is creating safety around you. So you need to be around friendships, around people, around environments that make it possible for you to be calm, that make it possible for you to not stress so much, that make it possible for you to feel safe, to feel valued, to feel important, to feel wanted, to feel accepted. We need to create spaces, time out on our day where we can just sit with ourselves and journal or check in with ourselves, whatever that looks like, whether it's working out or whatever it is, just a way to pour into ourselves, because that's a form of self-regulation, right? You need to have tasks that you do daily that feed you, that serve you, that show up for you. Because if you don't, you're constantly going to feel like you're just existing and not living. You need to make time to go hang out with friends, to go to a party, to go to an event, to go on a hike. So, you need to force to that time, that availability, because you will lose your mind. I know that feeling. You will lose your mind if you think everything is just about surviving, if you think everything is just about getting by and stuff like that. You need to go open yourself up to experiences. Another solution is that we need to take accountability. We need to take accountability for ourselves and our lives. So this, in the same breath that I'm saying we need to create safety, we need to be accountable for the spaces that aren't giving us that. We need to say, this relationship is hurting me, and take accountability for that and say, I need to step away from it away from it because I am constantly reinforcing my survival habits. I'm constantly reinforcing that need to take control, that need to whatever when I'm in the situation. I need to get out of it. I am constantly in fights or flights when I am with this person and stuff. And you need to be aware, because the thing is, you are attracted to that because it's all you know. You're attracted to that chaos. You're attracted to that dysfunction. And so you think it's normal that your cortisol is constantly spiking when you're in this relationship, in this job, in this pursuit. You think it's normal because it's all you've survived, right? But the truth is, there is more to life than living in a state of fear, than living in a state of stress and stuff like that. And if you start holding yourself accountable, where in my life am I constantly perpetuating these cycles that keep me stressed? Where in my life am I constantly perpetuating these systems that keep me living in survival mode? And it hurts because it means sometimes letting go of people you care about, letting go of situations that felt safe to you. But it's not that they were safe, they were familiar. And you need to be able to discern, and that's what I mean by taking accountability. Like, that's something I'm trying to do really, really, really head on in this season of my life, is actually just be honest. Like, Zama, this space is the reason that you're feeling depressed right now, is the reason that you're feeling so low right now, and this and that, but you keep going back to it. You keep doing, you know what I'm saying? You need to fight and go to war with yourself to pull yourself out of that state, so you can regulate, so you can come back to peace. You have to fight for your peace. You have to fight for your joy. And I want you to do that. Like, I'm so tired of being tired and exhausted and feel like everything has to be hard. Life is already hard on its own. I don't need to make it harder for myself. And I feel like I'm a lot happier because I've started making better choices. I'm a lot happier because I started making intentional and conscious decisions rather than just going to people pleasing, rather than stepping into the habit of just trying to make everybody happy or keep the peace and stuff like that, even when I was destroying myself internally. And yeah, like, I think that we will mistaken things, like we'll say, I don't have the motivation, I'm not inspired, I'm not this and that. But what you are, your brain is just tired. It's overworked in the wrong places because it's only concerned with surviving. Move and shift the needle into a space where you can have clarity and think, what is it that I want for my life? At some point, you have to sit with yourself and say, is this how I want the rest of my life to look like? Is this how I want to live for the rest of my life? And when you sit with yourself, when you have that clarity and you start breaking things down and seeing things and stuff, you're going to realize you can create more joy for yourself. You can create more love for yourself, more to look forward to. And that's what I wanted to speak about today, is just let's stop living to survive, and let's live more, let's enjoy more, let's be present more. And I hope that can happen for you. Please continue also just sending me comments and messages on anything about what you're going through, what you're thinking, what you would like me to talk about, and all of that. I really appreciate hearing from you. Honestly speaking, it means the world to me to know that you're there on the other side of this camera. But yeah, as always, I'm sending my love. Goodbye.
What in the 20s is going on?
In the 20s,
yeah.
the 20s, baby.
Plenty. What in the 20s is going on? 20s, baby. This is the 20s.